Hi, everyone. This is Sebastian Traeger, Managing Director of Reliability.com, and welcome back to another episode of Reliability 4.0. As always, we're on a mission to make the world a more reliable place. And today I'm glad to be joined with Glenn Simmonds of Sabert. Glenn, it is great to have you here. Thank you so much for joining us. We're excited to have you discuss a number of topics.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me on.
Well, I always like to just start with tell us a little bit about Sabert and tell us about your role there within Sabert.
Yeah, so Sabert is a food packaging company, as you can see behind me. We've got some of our products on display here in this nice room that we have set up here right inside of our corporate headquarters. We're a food manufacturing company. A lot of our material is private label, so you probably interact with our products, but you won't necessarily find our logo on it. I personally am the director of machine reliability for the company. I came in about 4 years ago to stand up a reliability program to make their SAP tool function. Right, it wasn't functioning in the CMMS space, and to start teaching those reliability basics and principles to help us chase after some OEE. Like, we were just coming out of COVID at the time I came in, so you can imagine for food packaging, COVID was a pretty high demand period, and OEE, gaps in OEE and machine reliability really showed up. And so I think the company got very interested in talking about machine reliability and working on a program.
Well, that's a really big job. I want to get into saying something like standing up a reliability program. It's obviously a lot. But before we get into that, what is your favorite package that you guys produce and why?
That's actually there's a lot of really cool stuff we do. The machines, some of them move very, very quickly. It's going to sound kind of weird, but the one I kind of like the most, because I think it's the neatest, is we call it beverage on the move. You probably know it as the big giant box of coffee.
Okay.
So you can get that big box of coffee that's got the bag inside of it with, I don't know, what, 30, 40, 50 cups of coffee in it.
Right.
The machine that we use to make those is actually really interesting. And then, it takes plastic fabrication and it combines paper and folding carton technology. So there's actually several steps, and you have to integrate all these pieces together.
Fascinating. So it actually makes that box. The machine does that box.
Yeah, so we make the bag, and then we start with roll stock paper. We print it to whatever the customer is after. We make the corrugated paper, and then we actually cut the box out, and then we fold it and glue it and set it up so that it's packaged flat. And then the end user pops it open and fills it up with coffee.
Fascinating. That would be fun to watch. I can understand how that's a pretty neat one.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun to watch those machines run.
Yeah. So that's interesting. You came in to set up a reliability program. How do you even begin to do that? So how do you assess kind of current state? How do you think about future state? And kind of what are your first moves?
Yeah, so I kind of did two different things at the same time. The first thing I did was I was visiting the plants to understand what we already had and what the team looked like, what the process looked like, what the tools looked like. But at the same time, before I came to Sabert, I had 25 years working for DuPont. So I had a pretty good idea of what a reliability program should look like, what a roadmap should be. So I started putting a roadmap together for the organization, so themes and projects and tools and methodologies we needed to teach. And I put them together in a vision map, right, or in a journey map, because if you do them in the wrong order, you don't actually get the benefit of some of the activities. Driving into machine-based or machine counter PMs when you can't effectively clean the machine when it goes down, like, you're in the wrong order. Like, you got to put stuff in the right order. But, so I was doing both, right? I put that high-level journey map together, and then I was assessing the plants at the same time. And then for each of the facilities, we put an action plan together. So we set a target that, at the end of 2 years, we wanted to be through the foundational journey in all of our plants. So I did it in like a 4-wave strategy.
So you sort of
then we started building,
phased out the different initiatives.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you think about it, if you're going from a purely reactive culture to a fully reliable culture, I mean, that's not a 2-year journey, right? That's a
Right.
10-year journey, depending on the complexity of the organization, frankly, how old and how beyond the pale your equipment is, right? If you never designed for reliability, you're never going to be more reliable than the design.
Hmm.
And so no amount of maintenance will fix a bad design. All you can do is try to mitigate the negative consequences,
Right.
while you work with the project and engineering team to design for reliability moving forward.
So was there obviously in a project like that, I'm guessing change management is a big component of it. Was there
That was everything.
were folks excited about your presence? Were they suspicious? How did you navigate some of that?
So yes and yes, right? I think a lot of it depended on which part of the organization you were talking about, right? So the technicians were pretty suspicious. I'm not actually the first director of machine reliability, right? They've tried to go down this road a couple of times before, and they've had various degrees of success. Getting machine reliability integrated into a culture is incredibly difficult, and it requires more than just the technical expert going out and doing some work. Other folks were very excited. So the OpEx team, our operational excellence team, actually started this project.
Okay.
They were about a year into overall OpEx implementations in their plants, putting OpEx consultants, starting to do roadmaps and Hoshin plans and X matrices to organize work, teaching people RCA or simple RCA 5Y, building standard work. So they had already started down that journey, and they were about a year in when I came into the organization. So there was some groundwork in play, but it was pretty quickly apparent that we didn't have any tools. So I spent the first bit of time building tools, and in hindsight, that cost us some momentum.
Okay.
Right, because we I had to reconfigure our SAP system. It was designed to do reactive maintenance. And I'm like, well, no. Like, if you want to do reliability, you got to do proactive maintenance. Right. And so I had to retool the system. We also implemented a mobile maintenance platform for the technicians at the same time. But, we tried to drive some tools into the organization, but we lost some time on the culture piece.
Okay.
And so when I look at where we are now, 4 years in, we've got a couple of plants that are doing really well and making good progress. They're mostly through the foundational phase and into what I'm going to call the preventive phase of our program. And then there are others that got started and then backslid when they had organizational changes. And then we've got others that there was no ownership in the plant and they failed to launch. Right. We're running the gambit.
So reflecting on that, I was going to ask you, and you kind of alluded to maybe some of those tools, but I know folks listening to this are definitely in a similar position where they've come in and they've said, I want to move to a more proactive culture. What would you say is maybe like one really good thing that you think you did? Obviously we can understand, like, you're not trying to brag about yourself, but just you can also reflect on, here's something good, and maybe something you're like, I wish I had not done that, or that was maybe not the right initiative.
Yeah. I think I'm really proud of the tools and the processes we built. Like, we have really, really good tools. We tried to design them out fit for purpose, and they're proving out to be fit for purpose because the plants that are using them are getting results.
It's great.
I think the place that we missed is we should have picked 1 or 2 pilots. We tried to implement across the board, and we didn't have plant level ownership in every single facility.
So when you think of pilots, are you thinking more in the tools you picked or in the plants you picked? Like, would you have said, hey, let's introduce one tool to one plant, get them up and running as a pilot?
Yeah, I think it was the plants. The tools weren't the problem, right?
Okay.
I think we would have ended up rolling the tool out to everybody anyway. And the way we built the tool, we could have actually continued to operate the legacy systems in all of our other facilities while we went and really drove the culture change at one or two plants and gone really deep and created a pull. And we tried to do a push, and it worked in some places because there was somebody on the other end ready to receive it. But I think in hindsight, we didn't create the correct pull everywhere.
Okay. And because I feel like this is a fascinating question. A lot of people struggle with this, which is how much do I introduce maybe a new process, a new technology, a new way of doing things and kind of let it take off? And how much do I kind of, push it, if you will, like kind of make it a standard, a mandatory thing? Because I'm actually more fascinated in the kind of the carrot than the stick. We all know that we can kind of enforce things and require, but we also know that data is going to be, if you do that, it's only going to get such good results, right? People figure out the minimum to kind of check that box. How do you think from a real kind of in the change management process, really the carrot component, rewarding or identifying or highlighting? What do you think is a way that you've seen success?
Well, the way that we've seen the success is we got to go find their pain point. And whether it's a tool or a process, most people say, "Oh, I need more OEE." Yeah, the mechanics don't care, right? That's not their pain point, right? The maintenance manager kind of cares because the plant manager is beating them up for that. But you got to really go find their pain point and then say, okay, what we are proposing is going to attack this pain point, and here's how we're going to go about it. So we're onboarding a new supervisor at one of our plants, a new maintenance supervisor. And I would normally start with teaching them how to log into SAP and manage the work orders and stuff like that. And instead, I spent the entire time talking about what are the behaviors of the team and how do they feed the long-term improvement effort. So why is it important to pay for the parts when you take them out of the crib? Why is it important that you charge your time to the work order? Why is it important? And then I showed them the dashboard and I said, and here's how you use it to solve this problem. And that was the entire training session, that first training session with that new supervisor. I just did it this week. So, we'll see. Yeah. How, because I've got two plants with new maintenance managers and maintenance supervisors. So we turned the organization over in two of our plants. And so my 2026, deliverables is to go focus on those two plants and help them build the right cadence from day one as those new leaders come in. That's great. In fact, the supervisor I trained, his new manager hasn't even started yet. He doesn't start till week after next. So I'm going to have the same conversation with him in 2 weeks.
But I what I'm hearing you say is rather than start with, hey, let's just start clicking buttons and doing a demo of software, let's kind of frame this in the big picture. Like, what big picture problem are we trying to solve and why? And how does that actually improve performance?
Yeah, well, I think, and I'm trying to drive it down even further. There are small annoyances that bug the team every day. And how can we help them with the discipline solve this particular issue? And then we can say, oh, by the way, it leverages to all these other things too. Right. So I'm trying to be very granular at what problem I'm attacking. And I'm trying to make it relatively short cycle so that they can see something in the first couple of weeks and months that they're actually making progress and they start to get excited.
That's good. How, to what extent are KPIs, did you introduce KPIs? And to what extent are you able to share which KPIs you focused on for kind of driving results?
Yes, I think that's another one of those places that we didn't do it as well as we probably should have. We have a really good set of tools and metrics, but they were not integrated into the leadership cadence. Right. So the plant maintenance teams were following KPIs. They had visual boards, but they weren't cascading and rolling up into the plant level boards. So the plant managers didn't necessarily know what the maintenance team was working on. Because
Okay.
so the metrics at the plant staff level were not connected to the things we were driving at the floor. So we, in our ops summit just a couple of weeks ago, one of the breakout sessions was around machine reliability. And I actually interviewed all of the plant managers as input to that. And we talked about what should the metrics at the plant level be, and then what are the metrics at the floor level that feed into those. And one of the things that came out of that session was that the managers didn't understand the metrics. And so they wanted a training session on what the metrics are and why they're important.
Well, that had to be encouraging that they actually wanted to know those metrics and they wanted to be able to solve for those.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was a win. I mean, it's going to be a lot of work, right? Because I mean, if you read the SMRP manual, it's what, 250 pages long for the metrics. I mean, that's a lot of metrics. Now we're not going to train that many. We picked like 4 at the plant level, right? So we're really talking about, cost per pound or cost per million square feet from a costing perspective. We're talking availability, right? OEE, availability, downtime hours. And then one of the other ones we're looking at is inventory turns, right? Of our spare parts, because we have a lot of money tied up in parts inventory. And if it's not turning over, I mean, we're a private company, so cash is king in a private company. And if you're tying up $30 or $40 million in your crib and it's not ever going anywhere, the owner is not particularly fond of that strategy.
Right. Absolutely.
He's okay with us spending money, but it's got to move,
right?
It's got to turn into profit at some point. So, inventory turns is on that list. And so now we can talk about what are the things that the technicians can do day in and day out to move those numbers.
To impact those. That's good.
Yep.
Switching gears a little bit, but getting back to kind of getting started, building out this kind of reliability world. So our company, of course, does root cause analysis. So we always have to ask people, how important was root cause analysis in bringing kind of culture change? Has it been important? How have you been doing it? And what have you seen the results as?
Yeah, so when we first started out, one of the early legs in my defect elimination work stream is problem solving, root cause problem solving. And so I came out of the DuPont school, so the DuPont has its own RCFA methodology. It's similar to PROACT, but it's a little different. But its target is the same place. But I'm actually a firm believer of 5 whys solves like 70% of problems.
Right.
Now, if you have to do a 5 why a third time on the same thing, you should probably do a much more comprehensive analysis. But from being able to tactically drive things on the floor, I'm looking for the folks to make a quick improvement or even if it's just an interim or an incremental step. So we started with 5 why. Some of the sites really grabbed it and ran, and others did not. And oddly enough, they're the same sites that succeeded in a lot of other things, right?
Okay.
As we've gone through this journey, we've moved to a more formal lean system. And so there's a lot of 5 why and fish bones. But they're not necessarily being driven in the machine reliability area yet, because there are so many other opportunities in the supply chain side and the operations side that have, frankly, some dollars associated with them. And so folks are utilizing those tools, but not necessarily in the machine reliability space to the level that I would like them to be using it.
But you're saying that's because they're finding other higher priority problems to focus on.
Correct. And so I think, we're utilizing those tools. They're not focused in machine reliability yet, but eventually, just like a good theory of constraints, right? If you solve enough problems, the constraint moves. And so there will be a day when the constraint will land in the machine reliability camp, and we'll be the recipient of the RCF, the RCA attention.
Right.
And that's when the, it'll be time to strike the iron to do, in-depth training of the team and to do stuff. Now, in my own project team, we do a lot of pre-mortems.
Okay.
I try to, because I also have the controls engineers that report to me. And so when we're doing controls projects and SCADA designs and HMI, my first question is, how can this break? Let's do a pre-mortem. And then what are we going to, what can we design out? What should we monitor for? What do we build a backup plan for? So on that design process, I like to use it. I like to use that pre-mortem methodology.
You mentioned that you brought some tools in and you're very happy with them. Any that you can share with folks that you feel like are, hey, you should take a look at X, Y, or Z?
Yeah, so we had the constraint of our CMMS, right? So our CMMS is SAP, right? I mean, we're an ERP house. So when you look at how you're going to do floor level activity, right, there's lots of a lot of players in the space. Very early on, we aligned on Innovative for our mobile platform. For us, it worked well. It had the digital forms we were looking for. But more importantly, it was relatively structured around the work management process that we wanted to deploy. And it's pretty simple to use. Like the footprint is pretty light. And then more recently, we've started using for our MRO space, which goes to the IMC presentation, we're using SpareTech. And we had started that project originally on data cleansing. And what we found is duplicate management and obsolescent management was actually more critical to us as we started analyzing our data a little deeper. And for us, we felt that that was the right tool to help us get through deduplicating and dealing with the obsoletes in our library.
Excellent. Well, it's been great talking to you. I want to make sure I give you time because we always like to ask folks for kind of one last word, sort of a, hey, if I'm talking to another reliability engineer who's maybe starting out, or maybe it's you want to speak to the one who's kind of starting the change process like you did, any kind of word you would want to share with them of wisdom.
Yeah, it was funny because I thought about this, right? Probably some of the best career advice I got was pretty early in my career. And it said, if it's not properly documented so somebody else can copy you, you didn't actually do it. Right. It's a pretty old school mindset, but even in the modern world and the more digital we become, right, it's really easy to move on to the next problem. But if you don't formalize it, if you don't institutionalize it, the organization is going to forget it, right? The leader that put it in or was driving it moves on, and then it falls apart because it's not part of the way we work.
Right.
And so the organization is just going to spend a bunch of money doing it over because they're going to have to relearn the lesson. So how do you proceduralize and institutionalize? You really got to think through that. Or anything you work on is not going to work. I mean, we're feeling some of it now. We've had leaders turn over in our plants, and we went backwards. And we're going to have that tells me we didn't get it institutionalized correctly.
Right.
So we're going to have to go back and do it again.
And that is also where tools really can come in handy, institutionalizing something, putting the process in place. Well, it's been great talking to you, Glenn. Thank you so much for joining us. Again, this has been Glenn Simmonds with Sabert. Really fantastic conversation. I feel like we could talk a lot longer. Maybe we'll have to have you back on a part 2 of this. But thank you so much for your time. And really to all listeners out there, we're about helping engineers and really anyone take steps to utilizing technology and in their work in practical ways, thinking through the change management component and the tools that they pick. Of course, if you're looking for anything related to root cause analysis, whether training or resources, please check out reliability.com. And obviously, if you're looking for software, take a look at Easy RCA. That's all we have time for today. Thank you again for joining us, Glenn, in making the world a more reliable place. And for everybody, we'll see you on the next episode. Thanks so much.
Yep, thank you.